I'm Taylor and I'm going to be talking to you today about feeding a horse for performance. The discipline I have chosen to talk to you about is the modern day racehorse. During this presentation I will discuss what are the nutritional requirements for the racehorse, what issues can occur when feeding the racehorse, and the requirements they need within their diets. Nutritional requirements for the racehorse. When racehorses are competing, the most important requirement they need is energy and lots of it. The modern day racehorse has such a high energy requirement, this cannot be met by just feeding them a forage alone diet. When the horse is worked, their muscles use small molecules called ATP and disown triphosphate, which these are used to stimulate muscle contraction. The muscles themselves store very little ATP, but it has a number of metabolic pathways that can produce it as quickly as it is used. The metabolic pathways use different fuels to produce the ATP. One reason of feeding the racehorse is to make the best store for the fuels, which then allows the muscles to continue to contract without fatigue. The most important fuel for the racehorse when racing and exercising is glycogen. Glycogen is stored mainly in the muscles and the rest is stored within the liver and as fat. When the horse is during the race and it is at its full stretch and speed, muscle glycogen is the major fuel used to allow the horse to have the energy to make the whole race at their full ability. As well as glycogen being an important part of the racehorse's diet, so is fat. Fat is important as well because it supplies calories for the lower intense work. So for an example, intensity training and also to reach the horse's maintained energy level is what fat is also important for. Dietary energy considerations. So dietary energy is usually measured in megacalories, which is also known as mcal. Digestible energy is also known as DE. This is also the energy levels that are absorbed by the horse. A racehorse's digestible energy is double the average horse's digestible energy. Good, healthy gut function is essential to the horse's well-being. A fibre-rich forage should be the basis of the racehorse's feeding programme. Racehorses' requirement of food a day should be between 7 to 9 kilograms per day, which most of the diet should be clean grass hay of timothy or oaten hay. The more forage offered to the racehorse will help prevent the risk of them getting gastric ulcers and colic. The regulations of the racing including the doping and drugs. Under Rule 211 of the BHA rules and regulations, it states that it's everyone's responsibility to make sure there is no prohibited substances that is present in the horse's body. If there are any prohibited substances found within the horse's body when it's tested, then it is a violation of the Rule 211. The BHA states that its prohibited substances are any substances that are capable of at any time of affecting the body system, for example, the effect of the musculoskeletal system. The following substances are banned within the racing industry, and the horses are not to have any trace of these substances in their body when being tested. Human antidepressants, antipsychotics, nervous system stimulants, anti-inflammatories, local anesthetics, cough suppressants, and other commonly and uncommonly used medications. Changes in the diet associated with competition. When the racehorses are being raced at such a young age, it causes a lot of stress on and within the horse's body. Horses that are being prepared for the racing track have large nutrient requirements. This is for the growth of the horse and maintenance of the whole body. As we have spoken about previously, the racehorse is typically fed a high grain diet, which gives them the energy requirement they need for a race. If that high grain feed isn't balanced out with a suitable amount of fibre to offer the horse, the nutritional value it needs. If it lacks in the fibre and nutrients, it can lead to digestive dysfunctions, disorders, and imbalances within the diet. The high levels of activity that the racehorse does increases the circulating free radicals, which are oxidative compounds that can damage membranes, tissues, and the immune responses. Figure 5 shows a typical racehorse's hoof, but this hoof is in a bad condition. This hoof is wide and flat-footed, but these are usual sights you may see of a racehorse's hoof. Because of their diet, they're not getting either the correct amount or even all the nutritional value they need. So they tend to have very weak feet, which doesn't help their racing career, as they tend to pull shoes off, which then damages their hoof walks. Farriers find it hard to keep fitting shoes to them, so they tend to have very weak feet, which then doesn't help their lower limbs when they're racing. Feeding program for the racehorse. Any feeding program, the main consideration is whether the diet meets the horse's nutritional needs and whether they have adequate water, energy, fibre, minerals and vitamins. For the racehorse or any athletic horse, the energy is the most important nutritional requirement. Daily training and racing burn a lot of body fuel, particularly muscle glycogen. These fuels reserves that are being burnt must be replaced. The calorie needs of a racehorse is around double a horse maintenance's requirement. For a 500 to a 544 kilogram horse, their digestible energy requirement is around 34 to 35 megacalories of digestible energy per day. It has been said that the racehorses in race training have estimated digestible energy intakes of 28 to 32 megacalories per day for a standard breed and 31 to 36 megacalories per day for thoroughbreds, which works out roughly 3 megacalories per 45 kilogram of body weight per day. Figure 6 shows a racehorse in competing fitness and condition. So this horse is obviously being fed the nutritional value it needs and the requirements that it needs for its racing career. Nutritional disorders. I'm firstly going to speak to you about gastric ulcers. Gastric ulcers are graded from 0 to 4. Grade 0 is where the stomach lining is intact and there is no sign of reddening. Grade 1, the stomach lining is still intact but there may be some areas of reddening. Grade 2, the stomach has small single or multiple ulcers. Grade 3, the stomach will have large single or multiple ulcers. Grade 4, the stomach has extensive ulcers, often merged to give areas of deep ulceration. If you look at the bottom of the slides, there is pictures of each grade of different gastric ulcers. High concentration in the horse's stomach of hyaluronic acid is a major factor of the production of gastric ulcers. Also, when the horses are being exercised, concentration is too high of gastric acid, which also contributes to ulcer formation. When horses pass urine, they secrete gastric acid continuously ever since they have become forage feeders, where they continuously eat over 24 hours in a contained area. This is also known as trickle feeding. In stabled horses, the acid levels can be quite high in the stomach. This is because of the high concentrate levels are too high and are fed 2 or 3 times a day, but the roughage levels are too low and are limited. When concentrate meals are being offered to the horse, a high amount of roughage should be available and given at the same time. So for race horses, they're fed lots of high grain meals, so it should be balanced out with roughage, but it isn't always. So you should always feed even more than 2 or 3 times a day. So you're feeding little and often, so you can keep the amount of grain you're feeding them, but then you can add more roughage to the horse's diet to balance that out, and this will help reduce the risk of catching gastric ulcers. If the horse has continual access to fibrous food, it will promote the release of bicarbonate-rich saliva, which buffers the stomach acid. And racehorses are most likely stable kept and get the odd in-hand grazing, but this is very rare, and that they will get turned out. But the fact of them not being turned out and not getting a good amount of roughage and nutrients from the grass mean there is nothing in their system to neutralise the acid in their stomach. So when they are working, there isn't enough fibre to act as a good buffer in the stomach, and then which means then the stomach acid will splash up and damage the stomach lining, which then could turn into ulcers. So if you feed your horse more fibre within their diet, it acts as a buffer across that stomach acid, and it neutralises the acid, so then it reduces the risk of it splashing up when they're in work, which will then burn the stomach lining. Begg and O'Sullivan did a study in 2003, which the outcome was he found 86% of 345 racehorses had gastric ulcers. The prevalence of the gastric ulceration in thoroughbred racehorses is reported to be between 66 and 93%, increasing to 80 to 100% as training duration increases and racing commences. It is also said that racehorses and even normal horses, it's one in every 3 horses have a sign of gastric ulcers. So it is quite popular with horses, and a lot of it is because the owners do not feed enough fibre and roughage within their diet. The way we can prevent the horse from suffering from gastric ulcers is by giving them a continual access to hay or grass. If that can't be done, then a good amount of roughage in the feed, for an example chaff. The high intake of roughage will lower the acid levels in the stomach, which means there will be more of a buffer to stop the stomach acid from splashing up to the stomach lining. If the horse has continual access to roughage, it will not affect the intake or digestion of concentrate feed. If anything, it will help the horse's intake and digestive system get as much nutritional value out of the food as the roughage helps the flow of the digestive system and keeps it healthy. So going back to the feeding more often, it's actually helping the digestive system get as much nutrients and nutritional value out of the feed. Where if you're just feeding high grain, the digestive system can't cope with that higher grain feed and digesting it all, so it will just get passed through and wasted. The second nutritional disorder I'm going to talk to you about is colic. So the word colic comes from the phrase abdominal pain. Colic can be fatal in horses depending on how severe it is and when it is noticed and treated. Colic is a common disorder that causes damage and affects the digestive system. There are different types of colic, tympanic and obstruction. There are also different types of severity in this condition. Often severity differs from mild abdominal pain, then it treated with a single dose of medication, whereas the severity is worse and then the horse may need to go through surgery, and in worst case scenario, euthanasia. The reason colic should always be treated as an emergency is because it can do a lot of damage in a small amount of time. If you suspect your horse is suffering from colic, then you will need to seek veterinary attention immediately. Different symptoms of colic would be if the horse is scared or worried. There could be pawing the ground to show discomfort, excessive rolling and lying down, and the horse will be off their feed and may not be wanting to eat their hay or hard feed. They might be trying to kick their stomach just to show they're in pain, just generally unhappy, and they also may be excessive sweating and abnormal pulse and respiration rate. So when you take their TPR, their pulse and respiration will give a really high reading, and sometimes the pulse can come over 50 beats per minute. Then they'll be increasing the risk of causing colic through all of these symptoms. That increases the cause because it puts lots of stress onto the digestive system. There are different diagnostic procedures for colic. The vet can use a stethoscope to listen to the gut sounds and to hear if the digestive system is working properly. When the vet comes out to see your horse, they will take their pulse and check the colour of the mucous membrane to check that they are a salmon pink colour. The vet may give the horse some sedation which will ease the horse's pain and make it easier for the vet to perform more invasive diagnostic. Once the horse has had sedation, then the vet will perform a rectal examination. A rectal exam is where the vet will palpate the large colon to release the gas or to untwist the colon. If it has a twist and there is an impaction, he can remove the impaction through the colon and rectum. Finally, the vet may also insert a nasal gastric tube, which is a long plastic tube that is inserted through the nostril and down to their esophagus into the stomach. By doing this, it allows the vet to drain any gas out or any fluids. So it then can flush out the impaction and they can also release the gas. So it will be a lot more comfortable for the horse. There are different types of treatment for colic, but it all depends on what type of colic the horse is suffering from. Analgesic, such as fluoxetine meglumine, is used when the horse is colicking to relieve the abdomen pain and to ease the horse so they can start to relax. The nasogastric tube can be used to remove the gas pressure within the gut, and it gives the gut gas and fluids to leave the gut and a lot easier for them to travel through the digestive system. So it's an easier pathway out of the system. Instead of it working all the way through the horse's system and through the hind gut, it can just come straight out of the nasogastric tube. If the colic has caused the intestine to twist or unfold, then surgery may be undertaken to cut out the dead part of the intestine. But the horse has got so much intestines, like the small intestine is 22 meters long, so cutting out a little section will not affect the way the digestive system works. The digestive function of the horse and of the racehorse. Two concerns arise with the racehorse's diet. Firstly, its low fibre intake is one factor thought to increase the risk of colic and gastric ulcers. Secondly, the high grain diets are also high in starch, which is the main component of cereal grains. The horse's digestive tract appears to have a limited capacity for the complete starch digestion. When starch is not digested in the small intestine, it passes through into the hindgut where it is fermented. This process is not only inefficient with respect to the assimilation of energy from the grain, but also can be detrimental to overall digestion. Starch overflow in the large intestine can decrease the pH level within the gut. The decreased pH level will make the gut acidosis, and this will cause issues in the normal gut microbial population and increases the risk of colic and diarrhea. Some horses get effective on a very high grain and low fibre diets, develop diarrhea, and they will also lose weight even considering the amount of high grain feed they are being fed on. They will still lose weight. These abnormalities are likely a reflection on the disturbance to the hind gut function because of the starch overflow, usually resolved with the feeding of more fibre and less grain. So basically it's put out there that the horse needs to have so much more fibre in their diet than what we most would think. So in conclusion, I have found that research and studies show that racehorses over that of other competition horses have a higher percentage of nutritional disorders such as gastric ulcers and colic. This would appear to be because of their feed and the fact they are on such a high grain diet and they're actually being fed too much of a high grain diet. There isn't enough roughage for the horses to ingest and to keep the digestive functioning healthy and within its diet. So the racehorse can have as much roughage as it can, so it's quite good to recommend feeding the horse a lot more times in the day, so instead of just 2 or 3 times, maybe feeding them 4 or 5, but giving them more roughage, as this helps the digestive system become healthy, and just to make it run properly, as it needs that for the proper digestion and to get the nutritional value out of all the feed it's intaking. Where it can't do that with high grains, there's not enough there for it. The digestive system just can't digest the high grains enough. It needs to have the good palatable roughage within its diet to keep it flowing properly. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed my presentation.